Alrighty, what is going on, everybody? No catching Connor today, but I do have Felix with me, so it's a big fight weekend. We had some good fights last week too, so they were off on Monday, but we wanted to get you guys a little something today. So we got King Felix G, head and owner of ITR Boxing, with me. So let's get into it. Felix, how was your Thanksgiving yesterday, and how you doing ahead of these big fights that we got tomorrow night?
Hey man, pleasure to be here. Again, sometimes we don't have shows here and there, but we'll pull it together and make sure we give you guys some form of content for sure. But yeah, Thanksgiving was cool, man. Chilled, didn't do much, laid low, had the phone face down for most of the day until the evening time. So it was definitely a good day, man. How was yours?
Man, it was good. No complaints. Being with family and stuff like that, had a good time. So it was all good, and we'll get into some fights now from last weekend because, like we said, we haven't been able to cover them yet, so we wanted to give you guys a few takes on that. But the first fight, we had a good time, and also had a good time watching this fight last Saturday. It was a fight between Emmanuel Navarrete and Robson Conceicao. Fight where Navarrete was the favorite. I think you guys had the same opinion as me and Nibs when we previewed this fight. We had been saying that it was a fight that was closer than the odds probably suggested, that Conceicao had the ability with this style to give Navarrete problems, and yeah, I mean, he certainly gave him problems. A few different times in there, it seemed like Navarrete was right there to close on the show on Conceicao, was never able to do it. Conceicao showed the heart of a champion, able to rally back. Final decision was a draw. I would have been cool with it kind of going either way, but what were your thoughts on that fight? Did you think that fight kind of fits in the mix as another one of these fight of the year contender kind of fights?
Yeah, most definitely. I think it might not. It's in the conversation for sure. It's in the top 10 fights of the year. I don't know if it would take home number one, but it was a good fight, man. A good showing from Conceicao. He keeps getting these fights with these top level dudes, and having close outings with all of them, except Shakur Stevenson. He got blown out in that one, but he's competitive with everybody. So you can't help but to like the guy, and Navarrete, we know what he's all about. So good fight. Definitely look forward to seeing them two run it back. I don't know how I didn't score that fight, so I don't know whose side I would go, but I'm okay with the draw.
Yeah, like Hybrid. Salute to you, Hybrid, also as well. He said he was happy with the draw. I was cool with the draw too. When I first watched it, I did score it, I think 114, 112 Navarrete, but I rewatched it in one of those middle rounds. I did give back to Conceicao. So if either guy had won it by a round or two, I think that would have been cool. But I think the way it wound up being, I was fine with too. Conceicao's a guy he's had tough luck too. I mean, he had the first title fight against Oscar Valdez, a fight that, first of all, I thought he won, but it was a very competitive fight, and it was the undertones from Valdez popping positive for that Reddick that they had, and the fight still went on. So bad luck there. Even the Shakur fight, like you said, he was soundly outpointed in that fight, but Shakur missed weight in that fight too. So it seemed like he never really got a fair shake until this fight. And I think even you can argue that he won this fight. So I think that a rematch is something I'd be interested in. I want to give Conceicao a lot of credit too. Both guys a lot of credit. Navarrete too. See, Hybrid says he had Conceicao winning. I saw a lot of 114, 112 Conceicao cards for sure, but he gets a ton of credit from me. Navarrete as well, just for the motor and keep going forward. But a few times in that fight, it seemed like he was one or two punches away from being stopped. Tim Bradley, even on the broadcast, was like, the end is near, which seemed like maybe he was kind of hoping that it was, but also I don't think it was far off. I think a lot of us kind of thought that way. And then Conceicao, at the end of that 11th round, he was just almost didn't even know where he was, struggled to get back to his corner. A lot of people thought the fight could have been stopped at that point. And he comes back in that 12th round and he throws 108 punches, which I believe is the most punches he's ever thrown in a round in his career. So just talk about a guy laying it on the line, doing whatever he could to try to get the victory. And even for him, that ended up sealing the draw. So what are your thoughts on were you like me? Were there moments in there where he kind of surprised you? Because it seemed like it was kind of just going the complete other way, where we were just waiting for Navarrete to take over. But Conceicao, to his credit, kind of never let him do it.
Yeah, I was expecting Conceicao to kind of fade because he seemingly will always start off hot and pick up a good lead. And kind of what he did against Valdez, he kind of was secure in his victory early on, which is the worst thing to do, and just kind of coasted. And I was expecting him to do that, and it seems like a habit of his. And I don't know if it's maybe some sort of fatigue or endurance issues, or just kind of like overconfident, but I felt like that's what was going to happen this time, but they did not do that. They didn't follow their own script this go around. So I was a little bit surprised by that.
What do you think's next for both guys? I know Shaki Foster now fits in the mix at 130 as a champion, just signed with Top Rank. Is this the fight that, I guess for me, I would want to see just a rematch of this first and then kind of them go on to bigger fights after that? But what do you think? Would you want to see them both get fights and have a rematch down the line, or do you want to see them run this back right away?
Um, it depends. Honestly, I wouldn't mind them taking a couple of other fights and then running it back, because I think Conceicao is gonna. He's got some things to figure out. I don't know what they are, but when he does, he's gonna become a world champion. There's just some couple things missing. I can't pinpoint him. I'm not a world class level coach. You know what I mean? So somebody's gonna find those flaws in him, fix them, correct them, get him on the right path. Whatever it is that needs to be done with him. And once he captures that world title and Navarrete picks up some more wins too, I think them two having a rematch as a unification bout is going to be a bigger deal. And I think they're so young that having an immediate rematch isn't necessary right now.
Yeah, but now Conceicao he's younger as a pro, but he is in his mid-30s a bit just because he did take the time in the amateurs. But he's a fresher, I think, mid-30s guy. So like you said, he could get a few more fights. I think that part of it's not being able to get a title. I think it's just kind of tough luck too when you face a Valdez fight. We thought you won and then you lost to Shakur Stevenson. You had a draw with Navarrete. You're fighting. There's no vacant titles. He's fighting the top guys in his weight class too. So for him, I do hope that he does get the world title at some point. He's been right there, and I think he clearly has the talent for it. So we will have to see what is next for both those guys. Clearly, even if they don't fight each other next, there's a lot of different fights you could see. And Abraham Nova getting in the mix, fighting either one of those guys, I'd be cool with. I mean, Valdez is there for a rematch with the Conceicao, maybe. Oshaki Foster is there. So even a bunch of other different names. Henry LeBron is in there too. So a bunch of different guys that they could fight at 130. So we shall see. I do think a rematch is something I want to see at some point, but we'll go to the main event now in that card. Shakur Stevenson fought Edwin De Los Santos in a fight that a lot of people have had a lot of opinions on. Some good, some not so good, some ugly. There's been a lot of back and forth going on in this fight, but what were just your initial thoughts, I guess, of watching that fight last weekend, which was one of, I think, the lowest fights on record for landed punches on CompuBox for a 12-round title fight?
Man, I mean, I've been on this platform many times, and I have high praise for Shakur Stevenson. I still do, but that fight makes me want to change my tune. I mean, that was a horrible performance, and then to go out there and just say that you weren't feeling good, before the fight and all that, it just sounds like excuses afterwards every single time. I mean, I'd rather a fighter just say, hey, I'm sorry, I tried, don't give excuses. Just say, I'm sorry, I tried my best out there tonight, and next time will be better. But to say something like that immediately after, it's kind of like a given. We kind of expected him to say that in a sense too. And I mean, to his credit, still he was able to keep Edwin away from him. But man, that's not the kind of performance you want to put on, especially when you're trying to campaign yourself into a super fight. It did nothing to help his stock. It definitely pulled it away. He's got more eyes on him now because of the negative response that he's getting to his fight. And you can tell based off of his reaction on social media, he's very defensive of it too. So I think everybody, the world, him included, know, that was not a good night at all. And he's definitely got to redeem himself from that performance.
Yeah, shout out to Boxing Learner in the chat too, saying Casemiro and Rigondeaux was actually the lowest punches thrown, and that's why I said I thought one of, because I think it had been a lot of people had said that it was the most, but I knew that fight and I knew Regis's last fight were both low on the CompuBox total, so I figured that probably was still the record. It's funny, even that's a fight that I still kind of enjoyed a bit. This one, not as much, but for Shakur, there's a lot of opinions going back and forth both ways. I think, as you said, someone like him too is going to get a lot of criticism just because, and I like when guys are confident. I want every fighter to be confident. I think that's part of what makes them great fighters, but he's always been the first one to poke at other fighters for performances and so forth. So I think that it was only, you kind of expected, as you said, people to kind of give him backlash for this fight. As far as I'm kind of with Hybrid on this one, clearly in the short term, this does definitely hurt his stock. I think you see a lot of any casual fans who kind of tuned in for the first time to watch him are probably looking like this is the guy that you guys were hyping up, like they're not really kind of understanding that whole thing. So I get that. I'm a fan of Shakur too. You guys know I've paid money to see. I went to see him fight in April, so I've been to his fight live before. There were a lot of trolls and stuff in the online community and in YouTube, but I think there are also. But I think there's a difference between when people are trolling and then when people are just giving, like us, like we have a platform, so people expect us to kind of give opinions based on the fight. So we never go overboard or anything crazy with criticism because fighters, they risk their lives and they go in the ring and do things like that. But I think it's fair to say that, and like Hybrid says, with the injury, he should have let the injury be known. I think that's you're almost in a damned if
Yeah.
you would, damned if you don't spot though, because then if he does before the fight, you'd see people the same thing. Oh, you're giving excuses before the fight. So I definitely do see that. You see people saying from a betting sense that they wish they had an idea on that, but that's one of those hard things with the sport of boxing. You're never going to truly know. And almost every single fighter that goes into a fight is always going to have something going on. Not always to the same extent, but no one ever really goes into a fight 100%. But going back to my Shakur thing, overall, it doesn't really change my opinion on him as a fighter. I've seen a lot of people kind of say that his stock goes down. I think from a sense of money wise, I think it can. I think as a fighter, like he's on my top 10 pound for pound list. I think I have him at number 8 or 7. He's not going to move from that spot. I think he's still exactly the same fighter I thought he was. I always thought very highly of him, but I was never one of those people who thought that he automatically washes everybody else, the Devins and the Tiafimos and the Tanks. I thought there's a good chance he could beat all of those guys, but I thought there was a chance that those guys could also still beat him. So I think still in the same mix as being a very good fighter, somebody who could still become a Hall of Fame fighter, but I never thought he was a sure thing that he was going to definitely beat every single one of those guys, no questions asked. And I thought you had people who thought that. For me, the one thing me and Nibs were saying that we wanted to see in this fight was we thought it was the first time we could have seen him deal with adversity. We've seen those other fighters all deal with adversity before, all in different fights. Even Tank hasn't been in some of the fights that we've wanted him to be in, but we've seen him in a fight with Barrios where he was losing the first few rounds, getting touched up, and we saw him adjust on the fly. We've seen Devin Haney hit by Linares. We've seen him, Lomachenko, take it to him in rounds 10, 11, and Devin respond and clinch the victory by winning round 12. We've seen Tiafimo do the same thing with Lomachenko. And that's kind of what I wanted to see out of Shakur. We still haven't seen it, so I think it's to be determined now. Is this just another, because we do have 2 examples of this now of him just kind of fighting this style when he has an athletic guy who can punch. The Nakatiya fight at first, I didn't know if it was a one-off, but it seems like it could be a pattern now with this De Los Santos thing. Bottom line, he's a 3-division world champion now. He's still an undefeated fighter. They always say you'd rather learn from your wins than you would from your losses. But what do you think about even just anything that I said, or just the spot that we've now had 2 of these performances by him with Nakatiya and Edwin De Los Santos? So do you think if he does fight a Tank Davis or a Teofimo Lopez, one of those explosive guys, do you think he would go back and automatically resort to this? Or do you think that this was kind of just a weird performance and it's not something that we'll see kind of going forward? Or is it a pattern?
I don't know. I'd hope it's not a pattern. And, hopefully he's not performing like that because he's not that he's afraid of the fighter, but afraid to take a risk in there. So he's just playing it safe because obviously he's still levels above these guys skill wise. So he's just doing the easiest route to a victory, it seems like right now. He's not going to be able to do that. And, these are the kind of fights where you want to test yourself and learn in there. This would have been a good growing year for him still. There's still a lot that we got to learn about him too, but this would have been a good year to go out there and experiment, try some new things and pick up some stuff. But he's going the safe route, just coasting to a victory because I think he feels he's already at that level where I feel like he can be. I just think he probably already thinks he's there right now, which is, going to hurt him. And what Hybrid mentioned, he should have made the injury known. Yeah, I agree with you too with what you said. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think there's a good way to do it. If you come out and in a classy way and say, hey, look, I injured my wrist in sparring. It's not severe enough to stop the fight, cancel the fight, postpone the fight, but it's definitely bothering me, and I'm just gonna let you guys know now. In case anything happens, there's no excuses, but I'm going in there injured already. Something like that. Let people know. That way there is no excuses. And if nothing happens, the most people can say is, oh, he was trying to fake an injury before the fight. So what? Nothing happened. Nothing came from it. You know what I mean? But, and it is kind of a sticky situation. It's weird how to do it. And I guess it's different too. Like if you're cutting sparring, you don't want your opponent to know that. If you have a hurt wrist, I mean, what are they going to, it's not like they're going to start punching your wrist. You know what I mean? If I have a messed up shoulder, maybe they might target the shoulder or something like that. So it just depends on, how you go about the message related to fans, what the injury is, all that. There's a lot of variables that go into it, but there has to be some way to, let people know ahead of time without it seeming like an excuse.
Yeah, but even just a reflection, having some good comments here saying that, because I want to go off of what he's saying here 100% too, saying it's weird that a power puncher wouldn't engage out of fear of being countered, and the counter punchers criticized.
Right.
Hybrid saying he still thinks Tank's the only one that can mess with him. And then this is because I have always said this too, so I want to go off of this too. He says, why take a risk at a 50-50 exchange when you can easily win while maintaining defensive responsibility? Because Felix, you know me. Everybody who listens to the show knows me. I'm always somebody who leans towards the boxer. When people call somebody a boring fighter, quote unquote, I look at that as a positive a lot of the times because it means that that person can't be hit. And with Shakur, that's still very true too, because if he did have a hurt shoulder and he's able to beat De Los Santos with just the jab, then that's a pretty damn impressive thing, and that's something that he can build off of going forward. And I think that De Los Santos, for everybody who's kind of shitting on Shakur for the performance, and I think you can make fair points on that. De Los Santos is the guy. He was the challenger. This was his huge opportunity, and I think that you can be just as hard on him, if not more harder, because he didn't capitalize on that moment. If you have a hurt fighter in front of you, you have a guy who's not engaging. Well, you're a pretty explosive guy. You're an athlete. I know Shakur didn't give him many chances, but I think it's easier for me to say sitting from here. But you could have tried to up the tempo a little more and try to force some more exchanges in there, and it seemed like he just wasn't able to do that. But going back to this comment right here, more than a fair point. 100% agree with it. I've said this about Devin Haney, a bunch of other different fighters too. I think with Shakur, he makes it a little tougher when you have this fight week when all of his talk was that he's going to step to De Los Santos. He's going to really beat him up. He's going to break him down. He's going to do all these things to him. And he said that he's on a whole different level from all these other guys in and around his weight class, which I think a lot of people have agreed with those opinions. I think that coming into the fight, I think people kind of expected more. So when you're saying that you're the next Floyd, the next Sugar Ray Leonard, and that you're going to really kick the shit out of De Los Santos. And then when you don't do it, because I agree 100% with what you're saying. Overall, boxing is the long game. You do want to stay healthy. The less amount of punishment you can take, the better. But I just think in this situation, when he set a certain expectation for himself, I think it's rightfully so for people. And we're not even going crazy to criticize. People have said much worse things than we are. We're just being objective with what we saw. But I think those are fair conclusions to draw, also based on the expectations that he kind of put on himself in this fight when he didn't really have to do that going into. So what do you think on that?
Yeah, no, and it's true. And I'm just gonna go back to what you guys said. It's a lot of blame could be put on Edwin too. Granted, it was a vacant championship, but Shakur, let's be real, he was an A side. He felt like he was defending a title. You know what I mean? Um, they always say if you want to beat the champion, you have to go and take that title from him. You have to win even more convincingly than the champion does. And he didn't put forth that effort. Granted, Shakur didn't let him, but it just seemed like he could have done a little bit more than what he did in there. Although I don't think he had the tools to really beat Shakur anyway, but more effort would have gone a long way from a fan's perspective.
Yeah, and the bottom line is, last thing I'll say on this topic, because we got some big fights to get into, is that this doesn't really change, like I said, my opinion on Shakur as a fighter. I was somebody who always thought there were a few guys who could be competitive with him, and I still think the same thing now. I don't think any of those guys wash him now or anything like that. I saw few different like kind of fringe contender names thrown around that people said, oh, this guy would beat Shakur now. This guy would beat Shakur now. Those guys would not be able to beat Shakur now, I don't think. I think he's still the same guy he was before. I think that if he had beaten a Tank Davis or somebody with the same fight that we had seen last weekend or another elite fighter, I think people would have given him more credit for it. I just think because they viewed De Los Santos as a lower level and Shakur kept saying how this guy's not on my level and all those kind of things. I think that that's generated kind of more of the reaction, because would you agree with that? If he had fought Tank Davis the same exact way and beat him the same exact way, I don't think people would be saying many of these things. I think it's just because they didn't see Edwin on his level. And it was a fight that I do think Shakur won, but it was also a much more competitive fight than I think any of us anticipated coming in also.
Yeah, I agree with that. If it was a bigger name, a Tank or anybody else in the top 5, top 3, yeah, it would have been a different story without a doubt. But it's like you said, Edwin's relatively unknown, and we know what those other guys can offer. So it's kind of like what Floyd did to Manny. It's impressive because we know what Manny's capable of, and look what Floyd did to him. He, nullified him completely.
And even next, I've seen people draw comparisons to like Devin Haney's fight with Gamboa, a few of Floyd's different fights also. But even the difference in those fights is that those guys still landed more punches than Edwin and Shakur did combined. So it's just so different because this was such a drastic, just almost an over exaggeration of those kind of styles too. But at the end of the day, like I said, he got the win. He just three division world champion, and he will be in big fights going forward. So I think in the short term, it might affect some of the casuals' interest in him, but I'm not going to sit up here and think that all of a sudden he loses to X, Y, and Z. I think he's still a pretty damn special fighter at the end of the day.
For sure. And I just wanted to say too, one thing that came into my mind, as I'm watching the fight is, do you think he put too much pressure on himself? I mean, you're walking to the ring with Bud and Andre Ward, like that alone is that's huge. That's like one of the dopest entrances ever. I mean, you have the former pound for pound number one fighter in the world and the current pound for pound number one fighter in the world. You're calling yourself the future. I mean, that's a dope entrance. Do you feel like you put too much pressure on yourself because of that? Like, what are your feelings on that one?
No, it's a fair point too, especially if no one going into the fight that you're not at your best. I think it does kind of add added pressure because we didn't know that at the time. So we thought if that was the case, we thought we were seeing 100% of Shakur. And if we got, let's say, 75% of Shakur, we didn't know that at the time either. So I think that is a fair thing. I think made for a hell of a picture. I shared the picture too, like 140, whatever. And it was a pretty dope thing, a pretty cool walkout. Also having Floyd there too. But I think those are fair points. And that just goes back to what I said, just on paper, just the performance is a win and it's an impressive win, but I think based on the expectations that were had going into it, I think that's where more of the criticism I think comes in of the performance as a whole.
Yeah, I agree.
And just the reflection said, even Saif Bud saying here, just the styles was always, was hoping De Los Santos could have maybe upped the pressure a bit, but having both southpaw guys, De Los Santos is still at his best as a counterpuncher. In hindsight, I can look back and see how the performance would have turned out this way. I don't want to be the guy to say, oh, I knew it was going to be this way because I didn't think it was going to turn out exactly that way. But in hindsight, with both being counter punches, both being southpaws, both being athletic, I think you can kind of see in hindsight how it could have turned out this way also.
For sure. Yeah.
So last thing I want to get into real quick. I know you said you didn't see this fight, so I'm just going to say it quickly. But and even with Saif Bud say, I didn't mind the Keyshawn and Wu Albright fight either. I thought that was competitive fight. I thought even Wu had some good moments later on in the fight, but I'm someone who, like, just as I said about just a reflection earlier with his comment, I'm somebody who normally loves all the boring fights too. And I think this was one of the rare fights that I kind of still did want a bit more, but like I said, Devin Haney fights or Guillermo Rigondeaux fights, I love watching all those guys all the time. So I'm definitely, if you guys see a boring fight, there's a pretty good chance that I like watching those boring fights. This one was just a little bit an exception. But going into, like I said, one more fight from last week. So I know you did not see this fight live, so I'll kind of just touch on it real quick. But Diego Pacheco had his first big step up fight against Coceres, Marcelo Coceres. Coceres, the guy who's a game guy. He's only been stopped once. That was against Billy Joe Saunders, a fight that he was even, I think, winning on one of the scorecards in that fight. Also, before he was stopped, he dropped Berlanga in a fight on the Wilder Fury undercard in a fight that could have gone either way. So it was interesting to see how Pacheco would step up in this fight. And he did step up. He dealt with some adversity. He was hit with some clean shots in the middle rounds, but he responded and dealt with the adversity exactly how you want to see a young fighter deal with it. He dealt with it on the fly. It took him about a round or two to adjust. And then after that, he put it right back on Coceres, landed a huge uppercut, and knocked him out later on in the fight. So I think that for Pacheco is a huge learning experience. I think he's really starting to arrive as a contender. And for me, the fight that I really want to see for him next year is an Edgar Berlanga fight. I think they both now have a common opponent, and I think that's the perfect kind of name for Pacheco to kind of skyrocket himself into real contender status. So I know you haven't seen the fight, but what do you think just on him getting because it's an impressive victory, the way he got it, and who do you want to see him in with next year? Do you like the Berlanga fight, or is there somebody else you want to see him matched with?
Yeah, and I did see the knockout. I didn't watch the entire fight, so I didn't see what he struggled with in the beginning. Definitely want to go back and watch that to kind of see what he's dealing with. What he struggles with in the ring. But yeah, I would love to see him get a big fight. The Berlanga fight would be fun for sure. And I think Ray said it before. He's told me before. We had interviewed Diego earlier this year at the Caleb Plant Benavidez card, and Pacheco was there. We asked him really quickly a couple questions, and Ray was, he was just telling me, he said, "Dude, that's the guy that we need to really focus on. He's got next." And so, when Ray tells me that, usually I kind of like, all right, I'm glued in, I'm locked in. So, I'm locked in with Pacheco's progress for sure.
Yeah, so Hybrid mentioned our guy right here. He wants to see him in with David Morrell. I think that's a fight that might not be ready just yet. And don't get me wrong, if they make that fight tomorrow, I'll be the first one to sign up and I will watch that. Absolutely. I will clear my whole weekend for that fight. David Morrell is somebody who I view as maybe even the top guy at 168 right now. But I think that for Pacheco, too, even when you said not that I even meant he struggled per se, but just even I think he was in there with a guy who came to win and a really game guy too. So Coceres, just like any game guy in there, hit him with a few shots, just like it's the sport of boxing. So we're not here. I expect a guy like Coceres to land some good shots, as he's done every single fight he's lost before. But I was so impressed with the way Pacheco at 22 years old was able to deal with those little moments of adversity and then turn it over and then just steamroll Coceres after. So like that speaks a lot to it, because there are a lot of other fighters who in that situation wouldn't have responded that same way also.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are like that. One of my most favorite boring fighters was James Toney. People used to say, they didn't like his style of fighting, but because he would lay on the ropes and do all his counter punching. Not like Floyd or Andre Ward. A lot of these dudes move around. They're flashy. James would lay on the ropes, let you come to him and just do work. And I loved watching that. One of the most boring fighters to a lot of people, but I loved watching that, at least in the second half of his career. Early on was different, but when he was fighting these bigger dudes, man, it was great to see.
Yeah, but that's crazy. People better not disrespect my boy James Toney, call him boring either, because he still threw his hands in there. And just a reflections point too is I'm the same way. So even when I'm not even, I wouldn't even call it criticizing Shakur's performance. I say just speaking on it and giving our opinion on it. Just it's also coming from somebody who really enjoys those pure boxing. How many fights have we had that you guys or some people have been like, oh, that fight was boring, this and that, and I've been like, you know what, I love that fight. He was clean, he didn't get hit, he did what he was supposed to do, all those kind of things. So we'll see here that Morel's right. You can't beat him with talent alone 100%. You got to have some dog in there. Morel's going to be fighting December 16th. I cannot wait for that. And we got Christian and Billy is another guy throw in that mix right there with those guys. I'm not sure who he's going to fight next. I think he's fighting. Well, no, he's fighting on the Better BF Callum Smith card. Hopefully after that fight, we can get him in a big fight too. So a lot of big guys in there for Pacheco. I think he should mix it up with some of those guys next year. But let's move on to the first fight for tomorrow. It's during the afternoon. It's on the zone card. It is a rematch in Ireland. It is Chantel Cameron against Katie Taylor. I picked Chantel Cameron in the first fight to win. She edged out a close fight, and now she went from the slight underdog to now the slight favorite in this fight. So what are your thoughts on this fight? Do you think it is repeat for Chantel Cameron, or do you think that Katie Taylor can get some revenge and win this fight and maybe set up either a third fight or a fight with Serrano or something like that down the road?
Just see how much more Katie Taylor has left in the tank. You know what I mean? She's putting some miles on her in the ring there, and we'll see. If she's able to get that dub in there against Cameron. That should be entertaining though, without a doubt. And I think we're going to see a difference now. Back to the 2-minute rounds. It's going to be entertaining. We're going to see a lot more leather flying in those 2 minutes than we would in when we did in the 3 minutes a few weeks ago with Serrano.
Yeah. So you guys drop your predictions in the chat for this one too. I want to know what y'all are thinking. We got some good activity in here because I think a lot of people are split on this one. I think the majority of people are picking Chantel Cameron to win, and I think I'm picking her to win, and I think she might even win a bit wider this time. I think just her being, to me, just the bigger, stronger, more natural 140. I think she's younger. She's fresher. Katie Taylor has had a lot of hard fights. I think just stylistically, even if Katie Taylor was in her prime, I think Chantel Cameron matches up well with her. So I see it going the same way, maybe a bit wider. I just think that 140, like I said, it's not Katie's natural weight per se, but I will say one thing, and I'm not going to count out Katie Taylor, though, because whenever you get a great fighter like her, a pound-for-pound great kind of fighter, it's hard to just say, oh, they can't turn things around, because even though I'm thinking Chantel might be able to kind of turn it into a 6-4 fight to maybe a 7-3 kind of fight, it was also only a 6-4, 5-5 fight the first time around. So Katie's looking at it saying, if I can just make a few adjustments, and if she's special fighter she is, kind of like what Ray's saying. Ray's picking Katie Taylor just because she's Katie Taylor. I think that's a fair thing too. We got Bean saying it in here too. Okay, so we got some Katie Taylor support in the chat, so I think that's a fair thing too. But what do you think about that? Do you think, is it hard to also count out someone like Katie Taylor, just knowing just her pedigree and just that she had the close fight with Delphine Pursoon, and then she came back and she won the rematch, so she's been there, kind of done that before. So what do you think about that, to play some devil's advocate also?
Yeah, and I think it just kind of goes back. I'm still rocking with Cameron, but as Ray said, there's a reason she's Katie Taylor. You know what I mean? And you can't go against that. But I just want to see, after all those hard fights, and especially after this one, that they had their first fight, I want to see, what does she have left, and has she grown from that last fight as far as like improving what strategy they have against her in there. So there's a few things I want to see first, but I guess this will show us how great Katie Taylor truly is if she could pull off a big victory.
Yeah. So you with me? So I'm going Chantel Cameron unanimous decision. You going unanimous, split, majority? What do you kind of? Because last fight was a majority decision, but I do think that this time around we see a unanimous her way.
I think she gets a what is it? I can't think of there's a longer word, but I think she gets a sympathy split decision.
A home count because it is in Ireland again, which is the interesting thing. Clearly,
Yeah.
because she's the big money draw, and I just hope for. It's kind of weird. Tell me if you agree, but I think that Cameron almost didn't get the respect she deserved for winning that first fight. It's almost like she didn't become the star that she should have. Kind of like a Canelo versus Bivol situation where
Yeah.
you won, but the other person is still the bigger star. So I think it'll be interesting to see if she does win this fight and she wins it more cleanly and she gets the credit she deserves. She's number 2 on my pound for pound list right now, and I just hope that she gets that kind of widespread credit if she beats a legend like Katie Taylor a second time.
Right. And hey, thanks, Ray. See, that's why we're co-hosts, man. He's got me. He's got me covered. I think she gets the sympathetic split decision. But yeah, I'm with you on that. There's always random fighters that somehow their victories get swept under the rug. Bivol is a perfect example. The one that always pops to my mind was Eric Morales and Zahir Rahim. Zahir gave him a freaking boxing lesson, but nobody ever talks about that fight ever. Nobody even knows who Zahir Rahim is, and I think this is kind of one of those same situations. If she wins the rematch decisively, I still think it might be one of those that's swept under the rug. What she does next might open some eyes, but for this one, it depends on how she wins too.
Yeah, but I think if Cameron wins, or I think if Taylor wins, I think she goes back down, and I think that she fights Serrano in a rematch again, which is a huge fight we would all want to see. I think if Cameron wins, I think you could see her in with a Natasha Jonas, Michaela Mayer winner. So I think for either one of them, I think there's big fights going forward. I just hope that if Cameron is able to win this fight, that she gets kind of the credit she deserves that I felt she kind of didn't get the first time around. But let's move over now to Showtime. We got 4 fights on this pay-per-view card. 4 very intriguing fights, I think now. The more that I think about all these fights, the more I think that we got live dogs in each 4 of these fights. The first one, we got our guy, someone we were very high on last year. We got Hector Luis Garcia fighting Lamont Roach in a great fight. Lamont Roach, the kind of guy who's had a few chances, had a few close losses. I think the Herring fight, and I think he might have lost one more, but he is coming back. He's very live dog in this fight. A lot of people are actually picking Lamont Roach to win this fight. So what are your thoughts on this fight? Are you going with Hector Garcia? Are you going with Lamont Roach? I believe it opens up the pay-per-view tomorrow.
I was huge on Hector Luis Garcia, like huge, and I still am a big believer in him. I like his style; he's got a good skill set, and I like his backstory. But I don't know, that was a big loss that he took. He was undefeated, and it seems like it might have hurt his momentum and him mentally. So with that being said, we haven't seen him in the ring. At the same time, we haven't seen Lamont Roach in the ring in a while either. So that's going to play a factor. I don't know who to really pick because I feel like they're kind of same level skill wise. Hector, I'm a big fan of. So I mean, maybe I'll go with Hector, but I feel like he probably has the less confidence going in there. He might be having that Teofimo feeling, like, do I still have it? You know what I mean? It by the time they lock up, Hector would have been out of the ring for almost a year, 11 months for sure.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because I think same thing as you. I am picking Hector to win, but I see Saif Bud saying Hector's got the experience. I think that can carry him a long way too. And I do want to give a quick thing because I don't want to shortchange Lamont Roach. Big fan of him too, but he only does have the one loss to Jamel Herring. He had a draw also. Ray's bringing up that he did just get a big paycheck, so you got to wonder about the hunger and things like that. But I'm going with Bean. I'm going with Saif Bud. I'm going with you two. I'm picking Hector Garcia to win. I think it'll be interesting early on. I think we'll find out a lot about this fight in the first few rounds because Hector Garcia did lose, but he lost to Tank Davis. I mean, I don't think there's any shame in that. You lose to Tank Davis, a fight that he looked good early, won a few rounds, and then Tank ended up doing his thing. He's moved down in weight, still a champion at 130. And just that run he had last year, which we gave him a lot of credit for, but a lot of people didn't. Really underrated run. He came in as a huge underdog against Chris Colbert, completely waxed Chris Colbert. Chris Colbert kind of just faded really bad, and Hector really put it on him in that fight. Came back and fought the champion, Roger Gutierrez, later on in the year, beat him cleanly too. So he was a fringe kind of honorable mention fighter of the year kind of guy last year. Top guy at 130, I think, coming into this year. So I think as long as he is that guy, and with just a reflection too, I think that Hector Garcia, I'm not sure if he's going to dog walk Lamont Roach, because I think Lamont Roach is game too, but I am picking Hector Garcia to win a decision, probably like 8-4, maybe 7-5. And I think as long as we get enough of the Hector that we've seen before, I think that he will win. But I mean, Lamont Roach, part of why I like this card too is you can make compelling arguments for any of the B-side guys. I think Lamont Roach is a guy who, talk about the hunger too. He's looking at this as his big opportunity. People can say, like Ray said, Hector's already kind of been there, done that. Lamont Roach has been waiting for a chance like this since the Herring fight. So he's hoping Heck capitalize on this chance also.
Yeah, and it could be like, that whole Rocky 3 scenario. And it could be very true. Hector might have lost his hunger a little bit. Lamont still is trying to get to that mountaintop. Hector's been there. Maybe that has to parts of playing the two. So we'll find out as soon as that fight happens. Was that 2 weeks from now?
This is actually the opener on the pay-per-view card tomorrow. So we got our boy Hector in action tomorrow night. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it makes sense why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought it was I thought it was I don't know why I thought December 16th. Yeah, that's dope.
Nah, you good. And I'm just a reflection here too. Like, I'm not holding, like I said, I don't hold that loss against him against Tank Davis because I think he did as good as he possibly could have. You can wonder about how much did that take out of him, but I think that he's still, I view him still as the same guy that he was before that fight. I think he's going to show everybody that tomorrow night. So let's move on to now the second fight that we have on this undercard. And this fight is, talk about a fight that could be fight of the year. We got Subriel Matias and we got Sherjan Ergashev in a huge fight. Matias, I like Matias a lot. I do think that he's a great fighter, but I think he could be in a little bit of upset alert here. So I think I know that I think he's a 4-1, 5-1 favorite. So he's a decent favorite. Ergashev's like a plus 300 underdog. But I don't know. I just think that Matias style, he's the kind of style that he's good. He's here for a good time. He ain't here for a long time. Those kind of styles, they are great to watch. I love watching. I'm going to be glued to my TV as soon as he steps in the ring. You just wonder at some point if someone's going to be able to crack that code. And I think once someone cracks that code, I think it could be really tough for him going forward. I think that Ergashev's going to be real dangerous in exchanges. And I think that Matias is going to have to be at his best without a doubt to take care of business. And I'm kind of hedging my bet a bit because I am still picking Matias to win. I think he does probably stop him late. But to me, this is a lot closer to like a legit 50-50 kind of fight. So I don't know if you've seen Ergashev before. He's somebody a lot of people haven't seen, but you just have any thoughts on Matias and this matchup? Because I really think that this is a fight that could really go either way.
Yeah, I've never seen Ergashev, but I mean, he's 23-0 with 20 knockouts, and he's from Uzbekistan. That, if you're a diehard boxing fan, that tells you all you need to know, really, in a nutshell. I mean, I'm sure you've watched him. Am I wrong in saying that he probably fits that stereotype of a Uzbekistan type of fighter with that type of record?
No, he does, and he's somebody who was a very established amateur, and he's done the perfect job, I think, of mixing the amateur and the pro styles together. I think he still has a bit of the amateur style, but he sits down on his punches. He's a big knockout puncher, and he uses his amateur pedigree to his advantage. I think for some guys like that, it kind of becomes a disadvantage for them in the pros, but I think that he uses it to his advantage, and I think he's the kind of style that can give Matias big problems. So I think it's a fight I'm really looking forward to. I'm pretty high on Ergashev, so I've been excited to see him finally get a big time shot like this.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And it's gonna be, man, it's gonna be a banger. If he has that style, we already know what Matias is about. That's gonna be a banger for sure. As Hybrid pointed out there as well.
Yeah, and then with Matias, he's now on the streak. A pretty impressive streak right now. He has four straight corner stoppages in his fight. So he's gotten TKOs because they've been stopped in the corner. That just speaks to, I think, his brutal style, the way he's able to break guys down. And I also think part of it comes from the stoppages are based on out of obviously what has happened, but also a fear of what can happen. I think since his title eliminator against Maxim Dadashev a few years ago when Dadashev passed away after the fight, I think you've seen a lot of big you've seen a lot of fear from guys. I think once the fight starts going one way, I think the corner of those people just start to kind of think about that and really worry about their guy. And I think that's something that we could see come into effect with the referee, with the corners and all those things. So I think it'll be interesting to see. He's got 4 in a row. I wonder if we could see a 5th corner stoppage if it starts going the wrong way. If Ergashev has a good start and then Matias starts to come on, I think that could be in play also.
That and 3 of the 4 fighters were undefeated too.
Mm-hmm.
And, pulling those kind of stats out against top level opposition is not easy.
Yeah, for sure. And we got a few comments in there, Scythe Bud. So Lipinets, Rivera, that's a fight I'm really looking forward to. Also, I guess we'll get into that real quick before we cover the co-main and the main event, because I do want to touch on that too. And then Ergashev did have an interesting fight with Michael Fox. That was a distance fight. And Michael Fox is a real tricky guy too. And he's kind of completely different style fight from Subriel Matias also, where Michael Fox is a 6'4", southpaw. He's slick. He's a very interesting, easy style to look bad against, where I think Subriel Matias is an easy style to get beat up against, but I think it's an easy style for a guy like Ergashev to maybe had good moments in that spot. So I'm still going to go out on a limb, and I will still pick Matias. I just think once Matias goes downhill, I think it'll be hard for Ergashev to stop him. So I get Matias by TKO in the late round. So you with me? Are you going Matias by stoppage or decision, or what are your predictions on this fight?
I'm gonna definitely rock with Matias stoppage for sure. Same history's not gonna go off course here. It's gonna repeat itself.
Yeah, but
At
I like
least
this
I
comment.
think.
I like this comment here by Just a Reflection too, saying just Ergashev disengages on a straight line. That's part of that amateur thing I was speaking to you about earlier too. You see a lot of those amateur guys going in straight lines, and his pendulum style might get him an early nap against the best check left hook in boxing, meaning Matias or Ergashev will overwhelm him with distance management. Another fight would be interesting to see how it plays out early. You saw Ponce kind of jump right on Matias when they fought earlier this year. And I think if Ergashev's able to do that, I think he does have the style where the straight line thing does worry me a bit once Matias gets going. But I think in the early rounds, he can kind of get his work, get in and out enough, maybe make Matias miss a bit and frustrate him. But it'll be interesting to see how long he can do that, because I think he could do it for a few rounds early. Easier said than done to do that in the later rounds against a guy like Matias, because just like Navarrete, like some of these other guys like Benavidez we'll talk about in the main event, he's going to keep coming forward, and there ain't much you can do about it once he really starts rolling downhill.
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt. Yeah, and if he gets that motor running, it's going to be the earlier night, the earlier he gets that going, because he is going to get that motor running for sure.
Yeah. So for I think it was Just a Reflection who mentioned, Scythe Bud who mentioned it, Lipinets and Rivera. I don't know if you know, but this fight is on the YouTube undercard. So Sergey Lipinets is going to fight Michel Rivera. Michel Rivera's first fight at 140 after the loss to Frank Martin. So it's a fight that's really intriguing to me too. I think this fight can go one of two ways. I think that Rivera moving up to 140 can help him out a lot. I think he was sucking himself down to make 135 a lot. And I think that he's still taller and longer than Lipinets. I think his jab and I think his ability from the outside could maybe keep Lipinets at bay for a long time, or him moving up to the weight, Lipinets being the bigger, stronger guy, been at 140, fought at 147. Maybe he's able to get on the inside and rough up Rivera. So I am picking Michel Rivera to win, but I kind of want to see how this fight plays out, because I do think that Lipinets is the classic kind of guy to show what kind of level you're on. And I think that if Rivera is not ready for this kind of fight right now, as Scythe Bed says, he's got Lipinets all the way, and that's a fair thing too. I think he's the underdog, but I think there's real value in Lipinets as an underdog, because if Michel Rivera isn't on all of his P's and Q's, then I think some of the performance from the Frank Martin fight and the confidence, like you spoke on how guys respond off a loss confidence-wise, if he's not fully confident, then Lipinets is the wrong kind of guy for you to be in with for your first fight at 140.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Lipinets has had a gritty career thus far. He's not had anything handed to him. He's definitely, this fight's going to be tougher than the Frank Martin fight. Even if Lipinets takes the dub, if Rivera loses both fights, this fight is going to be a harder loss than the Frank Martin fight. You're both undefeated. That's a 50-50 fight. This one on paper he should win momentum wise still, even coming off of that loss, but it's not going to be easy, man. Lipinets, again, he's no pushover. He's no joke. The dude's had a gritty career, and it's going to be a great test, if nothing else, for Michel Rivera, because that's not going to be an easy guy in there at all. Especially coming off a loss, I'm surprised that that's actually who they threw him in there with, to be completely honest. But if he beats Lipinets, we'll know that he's a little bit of a special fighter. I don't know how special of a fighter he can be, but if he beats Lipinets, he's going to make that 140 division even hotter now, because now we're going to want to see him in the mix with some more dudes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so we got a lot of Lipinets support in the chat. And the more I think about this fight, I'm not going to cheat my pick now. I did say Michel Rivera, but bro, I'm really starting to think about Lipinets for this. He is one of the most underrated guys in boxing, like Just a Reflection aside. But all these hybrid, they've all said too, even if Rivera can't make Lipinets respect him, I don't think if he can keep things. It's a funny fight where I think Rivera can make it look kind of easy if he's able to keep him on the outside with the jab and with the length. But if he's not able to keep it on the outside, I think it's a fight that he could have a lot of trouble with. So I think if it's a fight, if he's going to win, he'll win it easily. But I think if he doesn't win, I think it's a fight that can go the other way just as much, because I think the pressure, the experience, we talk about experience too. Lipinets has been in title fights. He's been there, done that. And he kind of, we know what to expect from him, I think, too. So Rivera might have a higher ceiling than Lipinets, but we don't know what but I think Lipinets has a higher floor too. So we know what to expect more from him. So maybe he should be my pick just because I know more what to expect from him going into this one.
Yeah, and I think with Lipinets, we know exactly what to expect, and I think based off of body language from the Frank Martin fight, you can tell that he was taking the soul of Rivera out of that fight completely. Like he made him look not at that level at all. And if Lipinets can do the same thing, get into his head, and make him feel the same way, then easy, Lipinets dub. I'm gonna rock with Rivera still, just because I said that, and I'm not gonna just change my pick. But Lipinets has the ability to make it super interesting, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's a really good one. I think it's on the YouTube prelims. At least I hope it is. If it is, I will definitely watch it, because some implications in that too. 140 to me is the best division of boxing. You got about 20 different guys who I think are legit world class level. I think these could be two of those guys, and the winner of this fight will definitely put themselves in the mix for a big fight. So let's move on now to the co-main event. We got some news that's dropped today about this co-main event. We got a lot going on. Just with Jermall Charlo, he hasn't fought in over 2.5 years. He's coming back not to defend his 160 belt. It's going to be at a 163 catchweight against Jose Benavidez. But we've seen today that he has even missed that weight by 3.5 pounds. And I'm just not sure what to even expect from this fight. I mean, if it was prime for prime and Jermall was on his game, I think it's an easy pick that he would really punish Jose Benavidez. I think he would walk him into something and probably knock him out somewhere in those middle rounds. But bro, I just don't know what to expect from Maul at this point. I really feel I'm rooting for the guy. I'm hoping he has a good performance tomorrow night, because you always want to see when these guys have their problems in lives. You always want to see them persevere and become a better version of themselves. But every time I see him in an interview or I see him at a press conference, he just does not seem the same to me. It seems like he's just all the time off and stuff and all the things he's been going through in his personal life have definitely affected him. And I think that even if he's still a much better fighter than Jose Benavidez, I think this fight weirdly becomes an interesting fight. A fight that when it was announced at first, I wasn't interested in, because I just thought Maul, he's been off a layoff, but he's the way better fighter. He'll be able to get it done. But the more that Jose has kind of talked shit, the more I think about this fight, the more that still pick him all to win. But you got to wonder if Jose Benavidez can capitalize on this, because I'm just not sure. I hate to say it, but is Maul even in a position he should be fighting coming up tomorrow night?
I hope so, man, because I mean, boxing is not a safe sport at all, and if he's not there mentally, that's not a good place to be. It doesn't matter who is on the other side of the ring. If you're not in the right space mentally, and it sounds like he might be. I mean, stepping away from the scale to lose weight, coming in heavier, like that's intentional. That's not like you didn't try to lose weight. You hit Burger King and you came back and you're heavier. You know what I mean? You left, you started drinking water, knowing you should be dehydrating more. Like you didn't care. You don't leave and come back heavier. That's definitely intentional. So it's clear that he's, he doesn't care. And I don't, if this is, how he's going to continue going with his career, you definitely should consider wrapping it up. I think just off of skill and instinct alone, he should be able to, take this victory home. But damn, bro, like it's kind of scary to see that he's not there the way he should be anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's not just the missing weight, like Joseph Reflection said, it's missing the weight by 3.5 pounds.
Yeah.
And I think depending on the guy, but it's just with him, you just really.
It's already a catch weight too.
Yeah, it was already going to be at 163 and not 160 too. So now you come in at 166 and change. Just it's that much harder, because I have someone I've come to the defense on him for a lot of different things. Just said that everybody goes through things in life he's going through, and anytime you have a marriage or kids involved, I always give that person the benefit of the doubt to straighten those things out. So I thought even the WBC, even if they should have stripped him, I think that's a fair thing too. But I think here we are now. It's crazy that I'm sure he's got to get stripped at some point, because he's clearly never going back down to 160. So whatever they do with that, I'm not sure. But the kind of fight now where, dare I say, is Jose Benavidez a live dog now? I mean, he clearly seems confident. He's been in training camp with David, so you know that he's in good shape. I just worry about with him, obviously, just the leg since he was shot in the leg a bunch of years back. He seems to have some moments where he can look really good, but the leg kind of gives out eventually. And I just think that even if Maul's not at his best, just being clearly the bigger guy on just 5 pounds alone, but even just naturally being the bigger, stronger guy, I think that Jose is going to try to pressure Jamal. But I think Jamal, if he's able to use that jab to kind of keep Jose at bay and then use that right hand, he's always had a great right uppercut too. I think he can catch Jose coming on the way in. But if he's not able to get Jose's respect, especially early, because I think Jose probably will try to jump on Maul early, especially once his leg is feeling good before it kind of gives out. It'll be interesting to see how he deals with it because we haven't seen him in the ring and we don't even know how he's going to respond mentally if Jose kind of really does get on him and tries. Because once you get in there, you know Jose is going to rough him up. He's going to maybe even borderline do dirty things, do anything he can to kind of rough up and make Jamal second guess himself. So I'll be interested to see how he responds to that in the ring also.
Yeah, he's gonna bully him for sure. The thing about Jose is he's got that dog in him. He's gonna try to test him and bully him. We'll see how far he can actually get. If he can maintain it. I don't think he's gonna be able to hurt Jamal at all in that fight. So he's gonna have to bully him. Throw him against the ropes. Let off as much combinations and punishment as he can. I don't know if he has that fully in him. I know he might for a few rounds, but again, I think at the end of the day, Charlo's gonna take it off of just natural skill and instinct alone. Without having to dig real deep into his bag of tricks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. So I'm picking Jamal by decision. I think Jose might have. So I think probably like an 8-2 kind of fight where I think Jamal is in control most of the way. Jose will have some moments getting on the inside. I'm just not sure if on talent level and on just his ability with his leg and how consistently he's going to be able to do it. Because I do still think Jamal, even if he's not in the greatest frame of mind to fight, I do think he's still the bigger, stronger guy. He's always had a really good jab. He's always had a really good right hand. So I think he's going to be able to keep Jose at bay enough. I'm worried this fight could turn into kind of a stinker, honestly. I think that Jose could have a few moments early, but if that leg does give out a little bit and he's not able to push on the front foot as much, I wouldn't blame Jamal for this either. But I think if you get to a point where Jose starts to fade, why would he get into exchanges with him? I think you could see him kind of just sticking that jab on him, throwing the right hands here and there and winning kind of a lackluster decision, which that might not be the worst thing for him. Because if he is going to make a comeback and get into some of these bigger fights, you're going to need the rounds. So I think the rounds would be good for him. But I do think that this is the one fight on the card that could have stinker kind of potential where maybe Jamal wins a decision, but it's kind of an underwhelming decision where we kind of maybe expected more based on all the shit talking these guys have had.
Yeah, true. That's what I was hoping on most those because they've had the biggest hype of any fight on that card is the trash talking, and that's what's got me invested in it. So we'll see how that bad blood plays into effect early on in this fight.
Yeah, so we got a few picks. We got people giving Jose a good shot in this too. But what if you had to pick somebody? You picking who are you picking and how? So I'm still going with Charlo by decision. I'm interested.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how we're going to get there, but I just think being the bigger, stronger guy, even if he's 60% of the version that we saw fight Montiel, I just think that he should be able to have enough to get it done. But what's your pick on this one before we move to the main event?
Yeah, I do think 60% of him still beats 100% of Jose, and there's a lot of factors that play into it too. Keep in mind, Jose started his career way down at 140.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This fight is at 163. I mean, technically, it's a super middleweight fight.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's that to play into, taking into consideration as well. He's been an active pro for a long time too. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. So it's not saying that he's a bum by any means or that he doesn't belong in there. I just do think that at that size, at that weight. And at this point in both of their careers, I think Charlo is going to pull off a decision. But I think it's going to be such a spirited effort by Benavidez that he's going to win in defeat.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what the fight is going to look like.
Putting a bigger point. So we got a few Jose's in here. So we got him saying if Jose can make it through 6 rounds, that Jamal might have trouble later on in the fight. Jose wins. We got another race and the same thing. Not sure if Charlo's a fighter anymore. He gets beat. And then we got my dad's in here, kind of echoing the same things I was saying. That Charlo is a lot going on right now, but still kind of too talented for Jose Benavidez. And that's what I'm thinking at the end of the day is that it might lead to, like I said, a fight where we're expecting kind of a banger out of this fight too, like we are in the Matias fight, just based on the promotion and trash talking. But I think the combination of Jose with his leg, how long is that going to be able to hold up? Just the size difference, and then just not knowing what to expect from Maul. I don't want it to be this way, but I'm just warning you guys that if there's one fight in the card that could underwhelm a bit, I think that this one has it written all over it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think this is a very similar to a Rocky 2 kind of story. Nibs would have loved this conversation, but I think with where they are in their careers, it has a potential to be a great fight if they both deliver. If Benavidez comes out and starts pressing Charlo, and Charlo, digs deep, says, fuck it, grabs his balls and goes hard, and they just continue the rest of the fight like that. It could be an epic clash, especially with the bad blood and the rivalry that they've got going on. I don't know if it happens like that, but that's what I would love. Best case scenario, that's what I would love to see.
Hey, if Jose is able to fight like the way he did in Creed, I think he could have a good shot. He's already fought a heavyweight there, so I
Yeah.
mean, he's fought against the bigger guys before, so we shall see in
Exactly.
that. But move on to the main event now. Fight that I've been waiting. My guy Boo Boo Andrade been finally waiting for him to get a big fight, and it's finally here. He's fighting David Benavidez. Another fight where a lot of opinions on this fight. I've seen some people say that Andrade wins a decision. I've seen Benavidez wins the decision. I've seen people say that Benavidez just whitewashes Boo Boo, that Andrade's gonna have nothing for him, and once he puts that pressure on, he's gonna fold. And that see a lot of people saying, "Oh, Andrade's a great fighter. Andrade's a hype job." There's kind of nobody in between. A lot of opinions on him, a lot of opinions on David. But what's your initial kind of thoughts on this fight that we have tomorrow? And I do like this fight because both kind of in similar spots where they're both looking for the Canelo fight, and they're both kind of having struggling time getting opponents until that fight. But so they both say, you know what, F it. I'm looking for that fight. You're looking for that fight. Let's just fight each other right now. Not even worried about that, and let's make a great fight. And I want to give them both props, first of all, for doing that, because it's a dangerous fight for both dudes at this point.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna, right away. I'll just kick off with my prediction. I'm gonna go with David Benavidez for sure. Um, I think Demetrius Andrade has a lot of skill. Obviously, it just so few and far between. He should have a whole lot more fights under his belt. It's the inactivity that's going to kill him in there. And then David is fighting top notch level dudes. I mean, you can make the case that last year he didn't, but this year, I mean, he went against Caleb Plant, who was the second best guy in the division, I think, at that time to have gone against. If you're not going to fight Canelo, that was a perfect guy to fight. Now, I mean, other than David Morrell, I don't see many other people beating David Benavidez right now. So I'm gonna, I'm rocking with him for this one. But it should be a fun, entertaining affair, no matter what. And if Boo Boo does pull it off, I mean, props to him for taking advantage of being on the biggest stage and putting himself right smack dead in the center of the Canelo sweepstakes, without a doubt. Because I think if he pulls it off and he wins decisively, not only will he put himself in those sweepstakes, but I think a lot of people are going to say that he can win based off of his size and his skill. And, Canelo's going to be able to, he's going to struggle with somebody who can box at his same weight too.
It's a big fight for Andrade too, because this is the kind of fight that me and his supporters have been waiting for all this time too. He finally gets a chance to fight another guy. So are you leaning for a decision for Benavidez, like being saying kind of like the planned fight, or are you thinking it's a stoppage, or what do you kind of think if you had to pick one or the other for this one?
Yeah, I'm going decision. I don't think for one, I don't think he has the kind of power, one punch that would stop Demetrius. Accumulative maybe, but I think he's good enough to stay away from getting punishment like that. And at the end of the day, Boo Boo is an elite fighter, so he's top level. He's been at that level for a long time, whether it's been inactive or not. He's been at that level still. So I don't think he's going to get stopped. I think it'll be a decision, Benavidez.
Yeah. So for me, I'm excited because this is just a great style matchup too. I think if you were to think of a style that can give the other guy problems, I think this is exactly what we have. Questions will be answered about both these guys. Benavidez, you can see he fought Plant. I think even Plant's a bigger and naturally stronger guy than Andrade. I think Andrade might have more dimensions, and I think Andrade has a bit more pop. He's a southpaw. He's a bit more awkward. Plant's a bit more foundational with his approach too. And then for Andrade, he's somebody who's a very skilled guy, very awkward guy, doesn't get hit a lot, but I do think that he does tend to fade a bit in the back half of the fight. So that's the kind of guy. So you think of Benavidez can give him problems going that way. David does have all the advantages in this fight. He's the younger guy, the stronger guy, more active. He did fight a guy in Plan too, even if that's not an exact replica of Andrade. I think he's fought somebody more like Andrade. But Andrade really hasn't fought anybody like David or anybody on that level before. As I said, Benavidez, he starts a little slow, especially against Plant. He did, but like Ray was saying, once he gets going, he really gets going. So I think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when he gets going, and it's going to come down to how many of those earlier rounds Boo Boo can bank in at this fight. It's another interesting point is that Plant fight, because you guys were at that fight too, but that was a 22-by-22 ring because Plant had requested that. This is also a 20-by-20 ring. So you got to wonder if that makes it a bit easier for Benavidez in those early rounds to kind of cut the ring off. So could be a non-factor, but it's something to point out because it is a bit smaller of a ring from last time around. But I think Andrade does have a pretty good shot in this fight. I think that for some of the things I had mentioned before, I think that he's not as big and strong as Plant naturally. Plant was a light heavyweight in the amateurs and moved down to 68. Boo Boo's in his third weight class now, but I do think Boo Boo is more athletic than Plant. I do think he's not a one-punch knockout guy, really, but he scores more knockdowns. He's knocked down, I think, everybody he's fought as a professional. And I do think that even if he's not going to knock out Benavidez, I do think that Benavidez, both guys even, are off balance a lot. Andrade, with his awkwardness, uses his off balance to his advantage sometimes, but David could clip him at some point, I think, with that. I think that even like just a reflection, part of the thing I was going to say, too, is that David, sometimes he is on the front foot, which can give Andrade problems later on in the fight. But I think earlier on, if he's too heavy on that front foot, I think Andrade could have a left hand or a right hook waiting on him. And even if it's not going to knock him out, I think this is the kind of fight where knockdowns can be huge scoring-wise, too, because a 10-8 round, if Andrade's able to book one or two of those in the early rounds, it makes it that much harder for Benavidez to come back in the fight. So the experience in the Plant fight, though, I think is going to help out David a lot. I think that is what could end up being the difference. I would probably go out on a limb and pick Andrade to outright win the fight had I not seen that fight before. But I think that David learned so much from the Plant fight, and being able, just that experience is going to help him out so much fighting a guy, even if, like I said, not exactly the same, but a similar kind of style. He hadn't really dealt with anyone like that before, so I think that's big. I think even what Ray's saying here, the Andrade fights really well, but almost chooses to not fight in coast. I think he could shine because he'll be forced to fight. That's a good point, too. I think that Andrade, in the ability, once he's in the pocket, I think he throws that heat in the pocket, too. He doesn't have a ton of knockouts. I can't get the comment off, Ray, so I guess it's so great of a comment. YouTube wants me to keep it on.
I think we were pressing it at the same time.
Okay. There we go. But no, it's a good point. And I think that is the kind of fight where I think both guys could shine really well. I think Benavidez could shine if he's able to stop Andrade late. And Andrade, this is the kind of fight where if Andrade's in his prime or even close to his prime, if he's the guy that I've always thought and a lot of people thought he was, this is the kind of fight that he can look really good in too. So I am picking, I think, Benavidez by like a majority decision, slightly controversial decision. I just think that kind of some of the comments they were making earlier, I think Just a Reflection did with the co-main event, saying he thinks Jose could get robbed due to politics. If it comes down to a close fight, I think that Canelo and Benavidez is still the fight that they want to make going forward. So I think if they're going to favor one guy, I think it would be David. But I think Demetrius is very, very live in this fight. I think the early rounds, we could come down to a point where we're in round 7 or 8 and we're saying, okay, is David going to need a stoppage to win? And we start to count up the rounds. And it's the kind of fight where I think a lot of people could have a bunch of different scorecards, and there could be a lot of conversation about this fight even after it happens.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that's a very valid prediction right there for sure. I think also what you mentioned, scoring a knockdown would be vital in this fight. Even just scoring a really decisive combination or a huge shot to really punctuate a round. I think that alone, because it might be one of those fights where it's really close, razor thin. So you want to punctuate every round as much as you can. So even landing a big shot, big counter shot that just kind of slaps, makes a lot of sound, gets the crowd going, catches the ears of the judges. Those kind of punches are going to be vital in this fight too. And with being the counter puncher, Boo Boo has the opportunity to really kind of steal this one under Benavidez's feet. I still think David takes a decision, but something to think about for sure. He can be crafty in there if he needs to.
Yeah, in the fight, I kind of see it resembling in a bit because it's a way different style matchup, but the way the fight played out, it's kind of like a Haney-Lomachenko fight, where I think Devin controlled some of the early rounds. But even I think if Andrade wins these rounds, I think it could be similar to how Devin did in the earlier rounds. I think that just like Lomachenko, I think the rounds David wins later on, kind of like in the Plant fight, he's going to win those rounds big. And I think that might make it seem like he might win, not get too much credit for it, but even I watched the Haney-Lomachenko fight earlier this week too. And that's the fight I can still find 7 rounds for Devin to win. So I think it could be the same thing where I might score at 7-5 for Demetrius to win, 8-4 for Demetrius to win. But David's rounds he wins might be so wide, and if you give him a swing round here or there, I could see how he could end up winning the decision.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I'm going to make another bold decision here that if Andrade loses, he's not going to get credit for it. We talked about it earlier with Cameron. I think Benavidez keeps pushing forward and the Canelo fight doesn't go off the table. And I think he lands into another big fight early next year. But I think, Demetrius isn't going to get the credit that he deserves if he pulls off a victory, unless it's like a huge victory.
I'd hope he would, just because even you see a lot of people have just been doubters. They've kind of called him hype job, this and that. So, and a lot of those same people are now saying, kind of like just a reflections point, a lot of people are not giving Andrade a good shot. I'm giving him a good shot. Clearly, you're picking him to win. But a lot of people are saying, oh, David's going to watch him. Boo-boo, he's a smaller guy. He's awkward, but he fades late in the fight. David's going to put it on him. David's going to stop him. No doubt about it, this and that. So I think when you say things like that, you better turn around and give him his credit if he not only even if he wins, but I think if he has a good performance and shows up in this fight. And I think it's the kind of fight that, like kind of like Bean saying, I think even if Benavidez wins, this is not the kind of fight where it's going to be a showcase fight. So even for Benavidez, if Benavidez wins a close fight, he should get a ton of credit for that too, but just because of how tricky Demetrius is. Demetrius has never lost a fight as a pro. I know he hasn't fought the greatest of opposition, but he's a guy who's a very talented guy too. So it's not a fight where David's going to look like $1 million. So whoever wins this fight, however they get to it, even the loser, if it's a good fight, they need credit no matter what, because these dudes are fighting each other and they're both in fights that stylistically don't match up great for them either.
Yeah, agree. And, major props to both of them for taking the fight. Props to David for taking 2 fights that he didn't have to take this year. But he's right there. And if he wins this fight the way we think he might win, or at least the way I think he might win, what do you think that lands him in Fighter of the Year conversation?
It's interesting. I think he'd be in the conversation for it. I think in a way, if he's going to beat Tapales, moving up to a new weight class and becoming undisputed by beating the 2 champs would probably be the front runner. I think someone like Tim Tszyu in the conversation also. I think Devin Haney, if he beats Regis Prograis, is in the conversation also. But I think David would fit in. If you have wins over Caleb Plant and Boo Boo Andrade, even if he doesn't win it, I think when we do our balance and we have the honorable mention, I think his name would absolutely be in that conversation for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to, by default, name Bud the Fighter of the Year because he beat Spence, which is, what we've been calling for, and the way he beat him. And I'm not mad at that because of the way he did it. But, David's put forth a hell of a year, even with just 2 fights. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And just a reflection, too, he says he's putting everything on Boo Boo and Limpinets. I will say, if you are someone who does like betting underdogs for value, I do think this is the card to do it for. I think you got Limpinets as an underdog we talked about. A lot of people like Lamont Roach, too. I'm picking Hector Garcia, but I can see why people would like Lamont Roach on that one. Ergashev against Matias is over a 3-1 underdog. I really like the value in that. We're still picking Charlo, but I think Jose Benavidez, you can wonder about, is like a 5-1 underdog or something. You can wonder about that. And then Boo Boo against Benavidez, like a 2 or 3-1 underdog. So if you are someone who does bet underdogs and speaks to the matchmaking for this card too, I think you could make, if you're looking for parlays or big plays on guys who are the B sides, I think this is the card to do it because you can see one or a few different upsets, I think, on this card without a doubt.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's a good betting card for sure. Curious to see who profits off of this one.
For sure. And then before I wrap this up, I do want to just say that I'm really happy for my guy Boo Boo Andrade to finally get this fight. And like I said, he has not been able to land the big fights he's wanted. Some has been out of his control. Some have just been business decisions he's made that have backfired on him. But we learn from all those kind of things. He's finally here, taking advantage. He's 35 years old. I just hope that his legs hold up and just in his 3rd weight class, he's able to take the punishment that David's going to give out and then give some back and get the victory. But I do think that it is interesting because if he is the kind of guy, like I said earlier, that I think he is, and a lot of people think he is, anybody who's thinking David's going to win and David's going to win easily, I'm telling y'all, you guys can be in for a surprise because if Boo Boo is who we all think he is, I think we could be in for a very, very special performance come tomorrow night. And he could finally get the respect that he's been looking to earn for damn near 15 years.
Hey, we'll see, man. That was definitely well said. I'm locked in. It's going to be fun. An upset would be fun just for the state of boxing because there's not really a lot of big headlines going on right now, positive headlines, and this would be a nice way to kind of stir the boxing pot.
No, without a doubt. So, are you guys going to do a show Monday? I don't know if you want to just plug that in and all right now because we're about to wrap up. I think Catch and Connor, we should be back next Friday for a recap of this, but is the shop going to be back on Monday to kind of talk about this fight and preview next week also?
Yeah, no, we'll be there Monday for sure. Monday night we'll be there, and then we'll start slowly transitioning to our year-end award shows, which you guys will be hearing and seeing on this platform. We'll probably break it up into, both shows. We'll do a portion of it, split it half and half, and then I know your show's going to have your own unique awards too. But we'll figure out the way we'll break that all down. But yeah, no, I mean mainly Monday night. We'll be here Monday night.
Cool. So I want to appreciate everybody for tuning in the chat. Appreciate you, Felix, for kind of hopping in and doing this with me. So wasn't an official show, kind of an in between both of our shows. We wanted to get something out for you guys. We got some big fights tomorrow night. So enjoy the fights. We'll catch y'all all next week. So peace out, everyone. Appreciate y'all tuning in as always.
Peace, y'all.
All righty, we'll see y'all.